Good afternoon or good morning, ladies and gentlemen of UK Estate and Lettings Agency Land. And we're joined today by the who's who of estate agents and PropTech suppliers to talk about the retention, the attraction, and the development of your estate agency teams. Let's be honest, all of you here who employ people dread the moment when your top-rated employee announces they're leaving. And let's be frank, losing a key member of staff is never easy, especially hard when your agency is under pressure, like the market we've been going through. This unwelcome announcement will inevitably be followed by some serious soul searching on behalf of yourself. And is there anything you could have done to make their job and role easier, reduce their workload, paid them more, make their job less stressful? Well, on today's webinar, we're going to answer those questions with an impressive panel of people to talk about it from their own point of both as agents, but also suppliers, because again, suppliers also have colleagues that they need to retain and attract and develop. Today, we are joined by three of the most impressive estate agents and letting agents I'm aware of. And the first one is a gentleman called Matt Baldock. You'll see him an awful lot on LinkedIn. He's very good with his videos, great content. And he puts his heart on his sleeves, but listen to him. I think you'll find his insight on social very, very good. We're also joined by Zoe Bywater, who's part of the Anala executive rep and runs her own letting and estate agency in sunny Bedford with the Belvoir network. We're joined by estate agency royalty with Vicky B from Location, award-winning estate agency in London, and also they have another office in East Anglia. What she doesn't know ain't worth knowing. Let's come join. We're also joined by the who's who or who's not of PropTech, depending on who you're talking to, only joking. And we're joined by Nick Ball from Mio, who are the big firm when it comes to sales progression and sales chains. We're joined by the estate agency Viking, Christian Byfield from Depository, but he's also an agent as well, so he can see it from both sides. We're joined by the lovely Charlotte Jeffrey Campbell, who is from the Able Agent, and she's an estate agency trainer, and she knows her onions as well. Ben Sellers from Starbury. Starbury are a fantastic prop tech firm, but the ethos in Starbury, and it's not only in the UK, but they're spread around the world, is second to none. Ian White, the guru of state agency, what that man doesn't know ain't worth knowing. He's also part of Crux Career, so he can give an idea from the point of view of from a recruiter as well as talking to agents himself. The wonderful Heather Staff from Spectre, again, a lady who, and especially at Spectre, that their staff retention and the way they develop their team, again, second to none. So we're going to learn some stuff there. And finally, we are joined by the Welsh Queen herself, Samantha Jones from Moneypenny. And again, the culture at Moneypenny, again, is second to none as well. So we're going to learn loads from this. So boys and girls, let us kick off and talk about, I'd like to go to Ian White first. Again, often the biggest issue when it comes to staff is when someone hands their notice in, which again means attraction. But what I'd like to do is, again, it's easy to retain someone, but what's the current state in the job market as a snapshot at the end of January 2022? Ian White.
Well, as a snapshot, there's an awful lot of vacancies and not an awful lot of candidates. That's pretty, and not just across a state agency, that's across any sort of sales, stroke, account management, technical roles. So it is a struggle if you lose somebody, because the replacement might be long. It might be a long time in finding them, because there just isn't the quality of candidate out there.
Is that because there's too many jobs, or just people aren't moving?
Well, a bit of both, really. I think certainly in the estate agency sector, it's eased up a little bit, because obviously Christmas has been, people have got past their double commission periods, their bonuses, and it's brought people into the marketplace. But I think there's other factors. I mean, there is obviously immigration factors that have changed because of the political climate. There are people that are less likely to want to change because they might be uncertain about the economy, and they don't want to leave a job where they perhaps got 10 years worth of employment rights to join one where they've got none. And certainly the estate agency sector is struggling to attract the talent because it's not providing the right, in a lot of cases, it's not providing the right culture, training, and financial reward that perhaps other sectors are. And therefore it's limiting itself to what it can attract. would be my view.
You know, all these jobs that are out there, because again, you're part of Crux Careers, again, other recruitment agencies are available. Are those being created because people are leaving, or just agents are just growing and they want more people?
Both. I mean, obviously, a lot of agents are expanding. I think there's an article in Property Industry Eye that over 2/3 are planning to expand. I think a lot of agents ran very thin in the back end of last year because it was a bit tighter on instructions and it was hard to recruit. And of course, people are leaving because January is always a month where you get a lot of resignations because people have had their bonus, they've had their Christmas break with family, they've reimagined their world, their life, where they want to live, who they want to work for. And I think they come in and hand in their notice. I mean, you know, it's a common time for people to be changing. So it's a combination of factors, Chris.
Good stuff. Okay, let's now move on and talk about retention of good staff. Sorry, I'm going to get told off by that because Matthew will actually say, you're not allowed to use the word staff.
You have to go down to that, you do not say staff.
Okay, so retention of colleagues. Right, let's go to you, Matthew, because you put your hand up, or you didn't, but in my eyes you did. Where does retaining good staff start? Is it a case of just paying them loads of money, or is it something deeper than that, like culture and other stuff like that? Talk to me.
I think it's obviously quite a lot deeper. I think, listen, money's important. It's a little bit like when you go, if you're going to go and value someone's house. Yes, they want the best price for it, but they also need the right buyer. So they need to know it's going to be the right person to work for their timescales. It's the same with work. There's no point saying people are going to work for free, but I think, I don't even think it's difficult. People just want to be valued. They want to be respected. A very foolish thing to do in a estate agency, especially in my early days as a corporate career, without knocking all corporates, would be to try and work out your hourly rate. Because you don't just work your 9 till 6, it's the kind of the time you do afterwards, the emotional baggage, everything you do. And I think a lot of the team, they work really hard. And actually, yes, they want remuneration, but they just want someone to say, well done, I see you, I see what you've done, and I appreciate it, thank you. And that's the way. By the same token, it's not about retaining them for your benefit, for your greed. It's about retaining them if it's right for them to be retained. If you go into it, that at some point they're going to outgrow. You can either grow as a company with them, or they're going to outgrow you and want to leave home. And that's down to you, and it's down to them. But we have a policy. I have a view that nobody ever needs to leave me for culture, because they can just come with me as an office junior. We can work all the way up, and if they want to start their own business, I'll start one with them. So I'm never going to have it to stay with someone feels they have to leave me because of culture, because of the way they're treated. But things change in life. But I think that's the other thing. When we say retention, it's a bit like I need them because they're going to earn me money. But actually, you want to retain them when it's good for them, but allow them to fly if the time's right.
Vicky, again, if you don't mind me saying, if you look at location, most people like the Hotel California check in, but they can never leave. Hey, you like that one, don't you? Vicky, what's your point of view on retention of colleagues?
I think there's a lot of layers to this onion, and there's so many different things to consider. But when it comes to culture, we have values, but these values also have to align with beliefs. A value that you can't make a belief will never be your culture. So that's something that's really, really key. But one thing that we found helps massively, on top of all of the training, internal, external, is almost like the massive transformational purpose that we have. So we look at trying to be a humanity plus kind of business. There's humanity plus businesses, and there's humanity minus companies. So having a mission that sort of adds value to the world ensures that you're a humanity plus company. And a business that has that kind of meaning and purpose attracts other people to be their very best and come on a journey with you. And it's exciting and it's inspiring. So people want to be on a massive journey. The bigger the goal and the bigger the mission, the more exciting it is, and the easier it actually is to achieve because of that. So that's also very, very key. It doesn't get talked about enough.
Charlotte, do you think this can be distilled and very simplistically between the difference between working for a manager or working for a leader? I know you need both.
Yeah, I think somebody that you work with who leads you, you want to be inspired. And I think we're talking a lot about what the company wants. I'm listening to at the moment. The company has a brand and a style and an ethos. I think one of the bits that we need to be really good at as leaders is, what does our individual staff member want? And I think from my colleague, team member, I normally use the word team member. What does my team want? What does my individual team member want? I've been in a position in my own career where I remember my boss saying to me, "You're a square peg in a round hole. What is it you want?" Because I was doing new business sales. That wasn't really my skill. I liked account management and business relationship. And I think an awful lot of the time it's about making sure that you understand what your individual staff members' objectives are. There are people who move from sales to lettings, or admin to sales, or lead or become managers, but that's not really what they want or what their goal is. So how much do we listen to them and their objectives, I suppose, is where I'm coming at it from.
It's interesting. We're going to go to Zoe next in a second, and then up to Ian. But it's interesting. A big man who I follow is Jack Gary V, and he says that we work for our colleagues, not the colleagues work for us. And I just love that line. Zoe, what have you got to add on this one?
I was just going to say, I mean, I totally agree and mirror what everyone else has been saying. And I got it wrong for so many years. It probably took me over 10 years to get it right. And I think I'm just about there now. And one of the things I used to do is I used to employ people for the task and not for their values. And I found when I...
Can I just jump in here? If you don't mind me saying, up until I don't know when you had your epiphany, which I think was a couple of years ago. I'm not joking, you boys and girls out there in estate agency land. Zoe, it was a running joke in my head. Who the hell has Zoe got rid of this week? Because it really was a turnstile, wasn't it? You were just, it was new members of staff just constantly.
Yeah.
When did the penny drop, and what was the penny that dropped? And what
do you know, it's funny because you make an assumption when you're being part of a franchise group that you're going to get some training on how to look after your team and lead them, and you don't. And you you wing it a bit and you think you're getting it right. And then I just went on a couple of training courses, and this summer, I've only recently met Charlotte, and I think she's absolutely amazing what she does. But I went on a couple of courses and met the absolutely fantastic Adele Crocker, who just made me think about things differently and approach things in a different way. And if anyone doesn't know who Adele is, she works for John Paul in the Castledene Group.
She's the one that makes John Paul look good, boys and girls.
I'm not going to say that, but she just made me look at things from a different perspective. And literally straight away, things that, I retain staff, everyone's happy. I went through 26 staff in 18 months, and with a team of 4, that's a lot of staff to get through. So, I now employ people on values. You can train everything else, so that's where I'm at with it. And there's so, like Vicky says, there's so many layers to this onion that we could be here all day talking about how it works and, what to do.
Okay, I'd like to go to Ian next, then Matt, then Heather.
I obviously agree with a lot of that. It's very refreshing for Zoe to say that it took her 10 years to get it right. I think that's quite a good thing to say live, and well done for doing it. But so I'd agree with a lot of the stuff about culture. But the thing that I see, both as in the consultancy side and recruitment, is that one of the biggest issues with retention is actually retaining people that are not on culture longer than you should. So, for example, if you have somebody that's not right, but you are bestowing and talking to everybody about these cultures, but for whatever reason, they might sell more houses than anybody else, they're able to get away with things, that actually makes other people leave. So sometimes who you hold on to will affect adversely your retention or your attraction. And people don't often get that bit. They're talking about the vacancy and the person who's left. Well, look at the bigger picture sometimes, that the environment they're in is also their colleagues. And often there's 1 or 2 real bad apples in there that are allowed to exist, typically because they perform, but they're killing everybody else while they do it. And you need to identify those people and get them off the bus pretty quick.
Quite a brave thing to do, especially in the sales environment. Let's go to Matt Baldock. Matt.
Yeah, just really kind of to almost congratulate and echo what Zoe said about admitting, we don't always have it right. So it's easy to come on these webinars and say, we do this, we do that, but nobody gets taught how to be a leader. I don't think it's something you necessarily, there's loads of books on it, but I think they can be shortened down to just listen and care about people. But I think if you don't, it takes a big person to admit they've made a mistake, and sometimes you've got, as the boss, you're expected to know everything. But I actually think it helps with retention. Sometimes if you say, look guys, I've made a mistake, I'll hold my hands up, because if you show that you're happy to admit you've made a mistake, the team will show that they're happy to make mistakes as well. And while you have to lead from a position of authority and power, sometimes you have to show some vulnerability. People need to know you're human. So I think actually by saying to the team, look, I got that one wrong, it's on me, I'm sorry, you'll actually find they'll give you kind of, you know, another chance.
All about showing vulnerability. Okay, let's go to Heather, then I'd like to go to Charlotte, then Nick afterwards. Heather.
Yeah, so we are the same. We recruit on values first, and as Ian said, that's all 18 times, and I think it's about resolving that quickly rather than letting it linger. But one of the things that we found has really helped us with retention, particularly of the good staff that we want to retain, is asking everybody the same set of questions on regular one-to-ones, including some difficult questions, which quite often as leaders, you don't necessarily want to hear the answer to, but you have to in order to address things. So things like one of our set questions is, what's not fun about working here? And how happy are you working here from 1 to 10? And what would make you never want to leave? And if you can get that, and they have to answer, and you get that direct feedback, and that's across the board, every single person in the business, and it shines a light on the things, the areas you need to improve to retain those staff. And also if people aren't happy and they're not a good cultural fit, then obviously you can take action after that.
Interesting you say one-to-ones. I mean, everyone should be doing one-to-ones almost on a monthly basis. But I wonder how many actual estate agents manage to get one-to-one once a year. Interesting. Okay, let's go to Charlotte.
Yeah, it was the same. I was going to say the same thing about the one-to-ones and how well do you communicate with your team? Do you understand what their objectives are? The other thing I'd like to bring in is how clearly defined is their role? Now, often there's a risk that I have a role in my head and I think that's what I'm valued for, but the role that my boss or my leader thinks I'm valued for can be different. So I think that communication, whether it's in a one-to-one or clearly defined roles, targets, whatever it may be, that's the best way that everybody's singing from the same song sheet, to coin a phrase, because that's where problems can occur. I've left a job myself in the past because I didn't think I was performing. And you often think, well, I'm not doing very well, I'm not very good at this, and you leave. I bumped into that boss a few years later who said, we were really sorry when you were left, you were brilliant. Well, I didn't know that. And I think you forget how you talk a lot, Chris, about how listers are very sensitive, and we hate rejection and failure. So I think that element of clearly defined roles, praise and reward and recognition is really important.
Excellent. Nick, what have you got to add to this?
I completely agree with pretty much everything everybody's said so far, Chris, but just taking a point, Charlotte brought it back to the individual and what are they thinking. I wonder how many of our audience actually have, every 6 months they'll have a company survey which really gets into the detail of the behaviours of the board of directors, whoever it may be, as well as their colleagues, to really get to understand each individual, each facet of this business. And that's something that I think would be worthwhile looking at. And as a business, we link our performance against our core values, be that customer focused or innovative or supportive or sharing knowledge. So teams are not just rewarded on the result, they're also rewarded against their behaviours as well. Which I think is also quite important. And as Vicky said, there's so many different layers to this great big.
Okay, I mean that sounds really strange coming from an estate agent's point of view, because you just get a percentage of the exchanges and a couple of quid in an envelope for a few mortgage leads. I'm sure most bosses wouldn't want to be paying on values. It seems quite alien to estate agents. That's probably what the issue is. Let's go to Ben, and then we'll go to Samantha Jones afterwards.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, the crazy times that we've been in, a lot of people working from home, some are still working from home, sort of almost over communicating or having the ability to communicate regularly to your teams wherever they are. I think in estate agencies, you're in bigger groups. There are a lot of these kind of big monolithic meetings that might come together once every so often. It's not really the most effective way of doing things. Obviously, these Zoom calls you can jump on. In our case, we have these town hall meetings on a monthly basis, but also having the use of sort of modern day channels like Slack is slowly finding its way into some estate agents. It's a notification tool like WhatsApp. It's a sort of WhatsApp for business, I would call it, in an organized fashion. What it does is it really opens the flow of communication, and you can actually start sharing information and people can passively absorb it as well. So it's not just noise, That's where I think the difference is with WhatsApp. But having channels that are designed for specific conversation, ideas, issues, announcements, celebrations, it just makes people feel, I mean, I know, Vicky, I think you use it, don't you? I think, well, I know Heather does. It really does, and I'm sure others do, really does pull a team together and make you feel you're part of it and you've got a voice.
Samantha Jones.
I think just following on from what Ben said, engagement is really key for us, because I think the more engaged your employees are, the better they're going to enjoy working there. So we're really keen on encouraging friendships and social groups. And from a comms perspective, we use Workplace by Facebook, and that just keeps everybody engaged and encourage everybody to recognise when somebody does something good and encourage those thank yous. We do things like wow cards just to give everybody a bit of a pat on the back, and that visible recognition from a colleague and as maybe a senior leader is what always works well, and people feel really proud.
I mean, just think how I think most of us have received a handwritten note from Stephen Brown, and how special does that make you feel? So
Really
plus getting
special.
stuff like that to your
Fantastic.
team as well. Okay, Christian, what have you got to add to this?
So I think what we've largely found is actually the job itself is actually quite a minor consideration. Like, you know, in terms of someone fulfilling a role, there's quite a technical success or fail with that. That's the attitude that we take with most of the roles anyway. So we hire on personality and attitude, and as Zoe and others have said, you know, you can, if they don't have the experience, you can very quickly train them. I think we try to focus on things outside of the role. So something we've done at Base ever since we launched is we close over Christmas. We've always said it's something discretionary based on how the company performs, but we typically close every year for nearly 2 weeks, and we don't count that as holiday against any of our staff. So again, you know, we give our staff that opportunity to completely decompress for about 2 weeks and shut off without taking a mandated holiday out of their annual holiday allowance. Another thing that we've done is we try to understand with our staff, I think Charlotte raised this earlier, is we try and understand what people don't like about their job. And typically what we find from that is actually when you dig down into it, it's typically something that can be fixed. It's typically something in your process that you're not doing right, or it drives you to go out and find a product like Slack, you know, that resolves that issue. So I think we try and look at that side of things, and then we also look at what people's objectives are outside of work, because, you know, I'm a true believer of we work to live, we don't live to work. So really, you know, what you do at work, great, be committed, but that's not what we're all put on this planet for. So we try and understand what people, what informs and motivates people outside of work. So the only example I can give of that is during the first lockdown, when we furloughed a couple of staff. The staff that we furloughed, what we went to them, the proposal we gave to them when we furloughed them was, we're happy to pay you the full salary, so we'll pay the 20% top up on top of the government 80%, on the condition that you do at least one course whilst you're furloughed, and we mandated that that shouldn't be anything to do with property. So one guy did a video editing course, another member of staff learned how to do jewelry and ended up starting a dog accessory jewelry business, and actually ended up leaving our company to pursue that business. And whilst right in the instant she gave notice, when she came back, there was mixed emotions. Actually, I was really proud of the fact that we gave her the opportunity to pursue something that she's now still pursuing 2 years later and doing really well at. You know, and yes, we lost a good member of staff, but we found another good member of staff to place them. And, you know, we've had several employees over the years where we've done what's right for the employee rather than what's right for the company. And in the long run, it all pays back. I'm a true believer in karma.
Absolutely too right. And before we go to Charlotte and then Matt, please pass on your colleagues' details to Vicky, so Albie can have his new bling. I don't know if you've seen it. Cutest puppy dog.
We'll get Alfie fully blinged. Don't worry. They're a little bit too delicate for Diamond. She's a bit of a beefcake, but yeah, he'll be rolling.
And of course, Zoe's got some beautiful dogs as well. So but probably a bit more roughy toughy for her hounds. Okay, let us go to Charlotte, then Matt, and then I want to move on to attraction.
Yes, I suppose I'm kind of thinking ahead to what we're talking about as well. That we've talked about culture, we've talked about understanding what your team member needs in terms of what is their job role, but also what are their obligations, what are their objectives, and their what is our development plan for them as well. So I think part of retention is development, and obviously from my point of view in terms of training and qualifications, who wants to be qualified, who wants letters after their names, who wants to join a membership body, who wants to be the networking person who goes for coffees with landlords in the area. What are we doing to develop them as an individual, as well as recognising their role and their concerns, I suppose?
Well, we'll look at that in the third part of the webinar. So we'll just
Ding,
hold
ding.
your horses on that one, Charlotte. Matthew, any more last thoughts on retention before we move on to attraction?
Just quickly, just to kind of echo what Christian said there, just about the lady that would start their own business. So I have a saying with all mine that I'm more interested in happy human beings than I am in a property manager, a negotiator, etc., etc. So we do one-to-ones religiously every month. Thankfully, I've got somebody who's scheduled them for me because I'm useless at admin. But I kind of like term it more of just a happiness one-to-one. So we'll obviously have targets and figures, but we make a note of the kind of where they want to go in their life. And every month, we'll just check in and say, is it still where you want to go? Is it still what you want to do? But I also say to them, and it depends, some will take it up and some won't, because they think it's words. If they're ever unhappy, they have just come to you and say, I'm not very happy, and you say, well, we can either fix it, or I can find you somewhere else to be happy. And, I work with a recruiter, and I say, they all know her, and I say, you have a number. If you come and tell me, I'll put you with that, and I'll give her my blessing to find you a new role. And I think when your team know you're not just trying to keep them there, when they know they can come to you with anything, and worst case, you're going to help them find someone to be happy, I think that makes a big difference.
Matt, if you don't mind me saying, you're not a normal estate agent, along with your brother as well. Where have you got this insight from? Because this is not normal estate agency speak.
I genuinely think I had a midlife crisis during the pandemic, and it just kind of changed. I can't tell you, I didn't used to be like this. I was brought up in the corporate, so when I first became let's say a boss, I was like numbers more, hit this, and then the pandemic happened, didn't it? And we all had to sit back and just kind of work out what was important, what wasn't. And it's just, I think I've worked out the type of person I want to be, and I have a really clear vision. And I genuinely would rather close my company tomorrow than have to be an arsehole of a boss. And that's just where I want to be. So, and some people won't want to work with me, and I get that, and that's great. But then I found some beautiful people that all sit downstairs and they do want to work with me, and it's lovely.
Good stuff. Right, before we move on to attraction, I think the things that we've learned here on retention is, with regard to your colleagues, we've got to enable fulfillment, we've got to provide them opportunities for them to grow, empower them to be responsible employees so they can drive it, make their own decisions, and we have to allow them to fail as well. We have to facilitate collaboration. So again, that can either be face-to-face or using modern technology like has been discussed with Slack. Awful thing. I know it isn't, but I'm trying to keep away from it, but it is very good. And then finally, support success through processes and workflows, because at the end of the day, you need a structure behind you for it to work. Okay, so that's the first part, which is retention. Let us move on to attraction. And by the definition of attraction, you have to be attractive. So Ian, let's back to you, guru of estate agency. What techniques are working well at the moment to attract people, or is it all about the Wonga? Talk to us.
Actually, in my experience, it definitely isn't about the Wonga, right? Particularly in more modern times. I think it's more about the way the business presents itself. I mean, I'm going to embarrass Vicky a little bit here, but in terms of the way they present themselves as a business, which doesn't really ask for business, they're going to attract people just by the fact that every video you see, every output, they're having fun, they're all smiling, and they are truly having fun and smiling. I've been in the environment, I know the business very well, and I walk in there and it lifts me, and I'd like to think I'm a fairly jolly chap. I don't have many bad days. So I think really just what you put out there, that just being decent human beings. I mean, Matt's saying that he would rather, I can't remember exactly what his terms were, but happy human beings. If you've got a business full of happy human beings, I tell you what, they'll do all the attraction you need for them. You don't really need a recruitment source. The happy human beings will do it for you.
Good stuff. Ben, what have you got to add to this?
I was just going to say, along those lines, and exactly what Vicky does, and I know Heather does, and others, is hero your staff. You know, I mean, this is one for retention as well. You know, let them run, let them flourish, let their characters come through. You know, get their videos rolling and get their social media rolling, and suddenly everyone else is looking around their buddies and all the other people going, wow, they're having such a good time. They're like their own boss, digital mayors, you know?
Well, almost creating online personal brands as individual employees on staff. Oh my God. I wonder who's been talking about that for the last X number of years. Samantha Jones.
Yeah, just following on from Ben, actually, social media definitely works for us from attracting talent. And we see a huge increase in CVs coming to us after any sort of social event that we do. So we have a Christmas party and people wanting to come and work here from seeing their friends' social media feeds. And when there's anything different that happens at Moneypenny, if it gets out there, that's where a lot of our opportunities come from new talent.
Good stuff. Heather Staff.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. And we do lots of things like our talent team get people to write blogs about what it's like to do the job, various different roles, and put that out there. And we always get comments from people who've read the blog and said, oh, I really liked what I read. I'd really like to work in that environment too. But one of the quite simple things that we've done that has definitely worked is have some more unusual benefits. So when you've got that job description out there, try and get something in there that's a little bit different to the standard corporate benefits. And I was sat in an estate agency all day last Wednesday, and the talk in the office was about how one of their competitors had got on their list of benefits that they pay for a Nando's lunch once a month. And honestly, the whole team was talking about it for about half an hour. You know, for the cost of a Nando's lunch, this is like amazing. So I think having something that just sets you apart a little bit and maybe shows a little bit of what your culture might be like just to get them through the door in the first place can work quite well.
Oh, let's get. We'll go. Nick, I know you put your hand up, but we'll go to Zoe next. Zoe, do you have a Nando's in Bedford?
We do, but we don't send the team for lunch there. But what I was going to say is, it's almost that, you know, everyone's sort of mirrored this. It's that FOMO, isn't it? Fear of missing out. You want people. I mean, I've taken on 2 new team members recently in the last sort of 12, 18 months, and all their colleagues at where they worked are constantly messaging them on LinkedIn and saying, what are you doing now? I've just seen that video you've just put out. It's absolutely amazing. And it's just this jealousy. I'm not saying that, you know, they're not going to be any better or any good, but it's just that I've noticed with other agencies locally, they restrict their staff. It's almost like they've got them in straitjackets, and it's going back to that, you're there to do a task, you're there to do a job. Whereas I let mine fly. And, you know, it's going back to the personal development as well as the career development. All of mine have all got mentors from Agents Together, which I'm sure you're probably going to mention at some point, which I just think, and you speak to people outside of the network here and they have no idea what I'm talking about. And you just think they're just missing so much. And it's just letting your team have that freedom to grow and to develop and not just be here to do a job. I mean, obviously let the job get done, but have a bit of fun while you're doing it.
Excellent, thank you, Zoe. I'll be down to Bedford soon because I really do like that really hot sauce, and because we don't have them in Bedford, so it is actually considered a delicacy. I know you people down south will think I'm weird, but there you go.
Instead of Watkins sofa, you could do the Belvoir sofa.
Nick, is it a fun place to work at Mio?
Sorry, Chris, what was that?
Is it a fun place to work at Mio?
Absolutely, 100%. I hope it certainly is. Anyway, Chris, I think the thing that I tend to look at, and looking at lots and lots of estate agency websites on a daily basis, is that you know, a lot of agents, people buy people, and the people are hidden behind the estate agency brand, from what I can see a lot of the time. And the good estate agency websites that I'm attracted to are the ones where there is a gallery, where there are people, where there are teams, and then there's a personal bio that might be amusing, that I'm attracted to. So if I'm a candidate looking to look at an estate agency branch, I'm immediately attracted to that particular business. Whereas there are other businesses out there that might say, well, we've been around since the year dot and we've always done it this way. it's not actually going to help you attract the best possible talent, as we already determined at the top. There are a lot of jobs out there, but there are very, very few good people that are looking. So you've got to differentiate yourself completely.
Someone that really did catch my eye before he became addicted to Dubai and taking a step backward from the business is Sean Newman. And he was very good on his personal brand, chucking out a hell of a lot of videos 2 or 3 years ago before the pandemic. And again, his job was to attract agents, okay, for the self-employed model, but that's irrelevant. The simple fact is that instead of him going out to try and sell the thing, he's going out there and making people buy from him. And surely Boss is out there. And again, I had an interview with Russell Quirk the other day, and it'll be coming out the next week or so, where we talked about these anonymous CEOs of these firms. You know, surely if you were the boss of Your Move or one of the big ones, you'd be putting your name out there. I mean, look at the big agents who are not run by estate agents. You like to be Purple Bricks and your Foxtons. None of us have seen any interviews of them, but if they went out there and actually put their face out there, then I think they would attract people to them. Charlotte, what's you got to say on this?
So I suppose I'm listening to an awful lot about, you know, we want the working environment to be fun and all of that. And I think, well, actually, is that all I want? I probably really want to see, because if I'm hungry and I have a career path and I want to feel supported and developed, it's not just what I see about the brand. It's the experience I get when I turn up at the interview as well, isn't it? So I think there's a really important piece for me here that if I'm going to attract talent by looking like a great business, when I get them to turn up at an interview, how does that go? How does that feel for that person? How well have we questioned that candidate? How well do we understand their objectives, their goals? And really, how well do we fit? And obviously from a training perspective, we've had I did an article in Pi the other week about people want careers, not jobs. And a career is opportunity. It is flexible lifestyle and reward, but I think it's being able to look ahead and saying, if I get this skill, I can go there. If I get that skill, I can go there. And I think that ability to progress. And I think from a training perspective, putting people on a program and being able to advertise, look, you are placed on a program, this is recognized nationally, you will be qualified at the end of it. That will appeal to those people who are hungry for success. And I think that's hugely important.
And I'm not labeling millennials, but I'm basically saying that is the age group that most colleagues tend to be in. A lot of people put a downer on millennials, when in reality, if you actually give that cohort, that age group, what they want, they can actually work probably just as hard, if not harder than as older buggers. So what I'd just like to do is, I'm just going to quickly go around the room and talk about how to motivate those classic 25 to 30-year-olds, 35-year-olds. Christian.
So I don't think the generational thing is anything new. I mean, I think, you know, you look at our parents and our grandparents, they referred to the young upstarts coming in with whatever they were labeled with then. I don't think this is a new psychology. I think it fundamentally underpins with what we've been talking about. One thing I did want to say, though, is I think how you convey yourself as a brand is really important. And I think, you know, both in terms of attracting the right staff and personalities, but also in terms of attracting the right clients as well that align with your brand. Like we've always done things a little bit differently at Base. And there have been times when we've questioned that, but ultimately we've always presented exactly who and how we are and how we do things. And that gives
Christian, do you think that the content you chuck out to attract staff can be the same content that attracts vendors?
Absolutely. I think if you're conveying the general culture and attitude of your business, I think both in terms of staff and clients, you will attract people that are aligned with how you present yourself. And for that reason, it's very important that how you're presenting yourself is a true reflection of what you guys are as a business. You know, I think those of you who follow us know that, you know, Monday we closed our office in the afternoon because we threw a surprise birthday party for Anne, and we did a little like poker party session, and some of our staff took photos and they were like, oh, we'll just put this in the WhatsApp group. And I was like, you can put them online if you want, you can post them on Facebook, I don't care. You know, we've got nothing to hide. We've closed our office for in-house training. But I have no issue with, you know, if a client sent me an angry email today saying, how dare you close your office at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I pay you, that client's probably not going to be a client of ours for much longer. and I won't be sorry to miss them. You know, and we've done our Amsterdam trips, which are quite well known for 5-6 years on the trot. You know, there's certain aspects of our culture, and we're quite brown ingrained in that. And you know, going back to the photos, you know, when the guys were asking about, oh, is it all right if we post photos online? I said, you know, go back to our timeline, you'll find photos 10 years ago of us out partying as a company where we're all free pouring vodka into each other's mouths. So I don't care. I'm very happy now. Look, obviously a corporate brand can't be quite that gung-ho, and I appreciate that, but I think that's the superpower that we have as independents, is that we can completely own our identity and our culture. And to a certain extent, you don't have to apologize for it. You know, yes, we do things very differently to the vast majority of other agents, and we're happy with that. You know, and that's not to say that we think negatively at all in any way of how other agents do things. This is just how we like to operate and how we like to work, and we hope that that attracts staff and clients that align with that psychology.
Sorry, you put your hand up. What have you got to add to this?
Well, mine's gone totally blank now, you know. But what I think I was going to go on from what Charlotte was saying is that obviously the first element is that fear of missing out. But then you do have to have that underlying structure, if you like. We have a full induction program. We know we do internal training. We have external training. There's an expectation that all mine are going to get qualified. So it's having that fun and the structure and selling that to the potential candidates.
Okay, I'd like to go to Ian first, then Sam, then Heather.
I just wanted to pick up on the millennial thing, because I wanted to pick up on the millennial comment. I don't think millennials are a problem at all. I think they're actually the solution, certainly in terms of the way they think and the way that they go about doing things. For example, you said about rewarding people based on behaviors. Well, a millennial would be able to grasp that concept as a leader, whereas perhaps somebody that was older, a bit more, they wouldn't be able to grasp that concept. And I think rewarding people for behaviors or following structures or certain things is a way forward. The problem is the owners of the businesses, or in general terms, are from a different generation, and they haven't bothered to educate themselves on how to lead a millennial. That's the problem. The workforce isn't getting younger. There's fewer and fewer people from their age bracket available to them, so they have to learn this process. They can't just expect the millennials to suddenly unlearn the way they've been taught. They're different to us.
How do they learn, though, Ian?
Normally the hard way, by resignation of all their people and having unsuccessful businesses. But ultimately, it's not learning. Matt said that he had an epiphany, or a similar sort of word, where during lockdown, he decided very clearly the sort of person. So, you know, they need to come to a sense of realization. Now, whether that's aided by training, whether that's aided by understanding, by knowledge, by reading, by working with businesses that have got that understanding. Similarly, an old boss doesn't have to be an arsehole. You know, and a millennial isn't lazy, and an old boss isn't. But most older business owners believe the problem is sat with the millennials, and I'm telling them now the problem is sat with you. Not you go and sort yourself out. Not the millennials.
Sam Jones, then Heather, then Ben.
I think giving visibility for anybody that's within the business, the opportunity where they can grow within the business is really key. So I think one thing that I think we've started getting a lot better, it was very tricky when we had new starters over lockdown that were working from home, but to be able to meet other people, say if somebody's come from a marketing background and they've started on taking calls or chats for our clients, to see where they can progress and have the opportunity to meet those people and understand what they do. So we've just started, or we just reintroduced sessions with our support teams, explaining to any new starters what the support teams actually do. And out of the my team in particular, I've got about 20 people on my team, and there's only 4 of them that have come externally from outside of Moneypenny. All of the rest of them have actually come through the ranks, so they really understand what our service is for our clients.
Well, okay, let's by osmosis moves nicely through to development. Heather, I don't know if you're going to be talking about attraction or development, but say your piece, and then we'll go to Ben.
Yeah, so I was just going to add that one of the things that we've done from the start, and one of our values, is be open, and that's be open about everything. So there isn't anything that's off limits with the team at all. And I think that in particular appeals to the millennials or younger generation coming through. I think Charlotte said before about, you know, a career rather than a job, and Vicky said about the wider purpose. And I think all of those things definitely appeal. And sometimes it's really difficult to be efficient. I think particularly if you've been leading for a long time and it's not how you've done things, to change that, it's going to be difficult, but it will be worth it, because then everybody feels like they're all one team pushing for the same thing together rather than an us and them. And we even do, we have an all hands every Friday, and at the end of the all hands, everybody in the business, so all 85 people, can submit anonymous questions to me and Tom at any point, and we answer them on the spot. So little things like that keep us honest, because you can ask us anything and we'll answer it honestly. So I think that does appeal to a certain generation.
Okay, we're going to go to Ben Sellers, but one thing that I'd certainly recommend everyone does, so there's a chap called Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. He's very famous for why, you know, what's your why, but he also talks about how to motivate the younger generation, and I think you'll find an awful lot of stuff in there. Ben, what have you got to say on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of moving into the development front, but it's got a bit of attraction to it as well. I was with Sam earlier in the week at a Property Academy partnership group, and there was a whole discussion about, you know, how do we get people back to the office? You know, what are we going to do? Does it work? People working at home, and I was asked to explain how do we operate, because obviously Starbury pretty well has been remote first for 20 odd years, and I was saying you've got to get yourself sorted in terms of the communication. So in this case, say if it's development, training, and so on, there's no doubt that live training is there's nothing like it, and it's great. And but there'll always be a couple of really awesome people that are working for you that can't either make it or are on holiday or so on. So actually making sure that you have a rule to record everything, and have your audio transcripts so that you can cut through an hour's thing to refer to, and then you can share it, and then you can put it in your knowledge hub, and stop repeating stuff in little groups. So pretty well everything we do is recorded. I mean, you know, virtually everything. And I cannot tell you how many times it's being watched, and I'm not having, or people are not having to repeat that. So it's really quite powerful. You've got new members of staff and they arrive 1 week after that great training for the project managers, and the first thing they do is that becomes part of their onboarding. So it's to try and do things once, do it well, and then have it reused, and that really helps and benefits people.
Okay, we've had a question come in from one of our live attendees, and as an estate agent scales, typically not everyone can know what's going on in every aspect of the business. How do you keep your team motivated so they know a rough sense of the direction the company is going? I know, Heather, you've touched on this, but I'd like to go to Ian first and then Heather.
It's communication. It's communication. I loved, I think it was Heather said about being transparent or clear. I can't remember exactly the words that she used, but just ultimately, you know, if you've got a clear vision, you communicate that very clearly. Everyone understands the expectations. It just works. But if you try to hide things, or if there's a level of communication that only certain people can hear and other people can't hear it, it just doesn't gel in well, I don't think it gels in any world, but it certainly doesn't gel in today's world. On Ben's thing about the remote working, I've had some real good conversations about this with estate agents, because every boss I've talked about, I've asked him, what's your objective? Is it to increase output, or is it to have a happy workplace? And they've all come at it from the output perspective. Well, is that the right perspective if they want real, true longevity of output? Of course, we can go and get output tomorrow. We get more output if we get 10 people sat around a table all together, phoning out. We're going to get more output. But if they're allowed a bit of flexibility or remote working or whatever else, long-term output, I don't know. Depends how you manage it. But it's interesting, the estate agent ownership will always come at it from profit, not from happiness. And I'm not so sure that works.
A massive tip. Bang on there. Happy staff will make the money come in, not the other way around. Massive tip for you. On WhatsApp, there's something called a broadcast list. It's not a group, it's a broadcast list. And as long as the person at the other end has your name saved in the phone, you can send one video individually to multiple people. So you've got 20 people in the broadcast list, you get one message, one video in each feed. I tell you here and now, for my business, it has transformed it because the message feels like it's for them. It's not in a group environment, so people feel embarrassed. And if they've got any questions, they come back. Heather, you're very vulnerable in your business, and again, I think vulnerability is the ultimate of communication. That's very brave, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable, but I think that's the point of it, isn't it? I think if you all are genuinely, you know, one team and striving for the same thing, then there really shouldn't be anything that's off the table. And to answer the question that came in terms of how do you ensure that the business knows, well, everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing as the business grows and keeps in check, there's two things that we've done as we've grown to address that. One is on the all hands, the heads of different departments will opt to give a feed, like take part of that session to update everybody on what's going on in their part of the business, but they don't have to. So it's not a case of, oh God, every week I've got to feedback on what we've done this week. It's if you have an update that you'd like the wider the business to know, present that. So that happens. And then the second thing that we've done, which I strongly recommend to any size of business, is implement what's known as OKRs, so objectives and key results. There's a book called Measure What Matters, which talks you through how to implement something like this, but it just means that annually and quarterly you set objectives, and those objectives can filter down through different teams, but it ensures that firstly everybody in the business knows what's a priority that quarter, that half, that year, and so you're all focused and working towards the same thing. And then the all hands is the retrospective, looking back on what you've actually done. So we find those two methods work really well to make sure that everybody knows what's going on.
It really comes down to communication, doesn't it? We're in a human business, we're in relationships, and it's the way you communicate. I mean, I'd like to talk about development, but if you don't mind me saying, we've talked about retention, we've talked about attraction, and we've kind of started to talk about development, and all the same themes seem to be coming all the way through, that what will help you with retention will help you with attraction, and what will help you with attraction will help you with development. And they're not separate items. Is that right, Charlotte?
I think so, because I think if you want to attract somebody who wants a career with you, then having a plan to develop them from day one is really important. Coming back to what Heather said about these objectives, one of the things that always astounds me is a business owner will say, we need to increase fees. And there's the plan. We all need to increase fees. Now, I don't know any estate agency owner who hasn't had that conversation with their team, but how many have actually sat down with their team and said, what do you think we're worth? Have you ever sat down in your group and said, why are we different? Why should our fees be going up? What do you think our fees should be? Now, if that team feel confident, developed, qualified, trained, their overwhelming feeling of value is going to be so much higher than if they just feel they're being done to, in terms of all I've got to do is hit mortgage targets, all I've got to do is raise fees. So I think for me, development is key in achieving those key goals that Heather mentions, these quarterly goals. But also it's got to be bite-sized chunks. I mean, I'm not naive. I know how hard it is to develop a member of staff, and training is a really difficult thing. We did a survey and we got feedback, and a lot of the feedback was, I feel like I'm failing at training, from the business owners, because it's so hard to get it right. So little bite-sized chunks, we've learned with Able Agent, has been absolutely the key for it being measurable. And then each individual person can decide what their development looks like to them, which I think is really important.
Good stuff. I'm going to go to Matt and Ian, and I'm going to ask to keep it nice and short and sweet, because I want to just go around the room and just take the biggest takeaway that we've had from today. So Matt and Ian. Matt first, please.
I just think, just regarding the development, it's like training is very important. You know, we use Charlotte's training platform, but also you've got to allow you guys the responsibility, but also the ability to make mistakes and know they're not going to be punished for it. So to take on a task themselves, if they, but without fear of getting reprimanded if they get it wrong. We just had a case here very quickly where we've started working with Chris at the depository. So one of Jasmine D, my senior portfolio manager, my brother Neil is amazing at all this stuff. He could have easily taken that on, and he said to Jazz, this can be your project, you run with it. She set it all up, and then one of the best LinkedIn posts I saw that day was her on there, just saying how proud she was and how happy she was, because she'd done it and it was like her baby. And now, because we've given her that responsibility, number one, we haven't had to do the work. I don't have to worry about retaining her because she's not going anywhere, because she knows how valued she is and she's being allowed to grow. So it is just that if you develop them, you'll retain them, and you don't need to attract them, but you will be able to attract the people you want to attract. It's just a whole circle.
Excellent. Ian White.
For me, developing people, I think there's two really just so obvious things for me. If your people don't need developing, it means they're better than you, they know more than you. Stand aside and let them do what they do better than you. Just stand aside and let them do it. If they do need developing and you don't do it, trust me, your competitor will happily do it for you. So you either let them free and do the job if they're better than you at it, or they're more developed than you at it. But if they're not, you've got to get them to your level and beyond. Otherwise, your competitor will.
Excellent. Well, we're going to go around the room now, and I'd like to go to Vicky B first, because Vicky, if you don't mind me saying, Asad is a truly inspirational leader in the fact that, you know, you started, we interviewed you on the Watkins sofa, and you started as an egg, and now look at you, and in your own right, you are considered a leader in the industry, but yet at the same, and that a lot of that is on your shoulders that you've driven it, yet you had the opportunity from a fantastic leader that's let you get on with it. So I'm going to kind of steal this one off you. I want you to talk about having a boss with a foresight to let you fly and flourish, spread your wings has been amazing, hasn't it?
Yeah. So it has been absolutely amazing. Obviously, an exceptional example set for me. But one thing that Asad always tries to do, and I do the same, is the emphasis that we have on our own personal growth and development. In order to foster, you know, an environment of like freedom and responsibility, we have to empower everybody else. And like Ian was just saying, if you're not working on yourself and you have a, you know, teammate that's doing more than you and they're outgrowing you, step aside or find yourself in a tricky position. But what example are we leading by? What effort are we making to learn, train and develop ourselves relentlessly so that we can provide better training for our teammates? Now, we obviously have the skill version of training, but the mindset makes the biggest difference. The associations that we have to everything. So, for example, Matthew's talked a lot about allowing people to make mistakes. That's key. The associations that we have to making a mistake, as Stephen Brown would call it, a learning opportunity, is absolutely true. And I say to my staff all the time, fail, fail, fail as much as you possibly can. Make all the mistakes, share those mistakes with everybody else so we can learn from them as well. And we've had situations where a staff member will make a terrible mistake and be the one to say, guys, I need everyone to have a quick little all hands. I want to talk about something that I did and what I learned from it. And that is one of the most powerful kind of experiences you can have within a team. So it makes all the difference. But as leaders, we need to focus on what are we learning, how are we training and developing ourselves so that we can bring better advice, better training, as well as using other exceptional trainers that are out there. But mindset is everything.
Thank you, Vicky. And do check out, if you type into YouTube, the Vicky Bibiris story, just half an hour to 3/4 an hour of awesomeness of that. Charlotte, what's been your biggest takeaway from today?
I think it's about the planning bit and that you need to think about your culture. I think often you're so busy, and I know the agents watching this, they might be 1-2 branch agents. It's very hard sometimes to take a step back and look from the outside in at your culture and what you do offer and how you're perceived. So my biggest takeaway is you need to take a step back and think, what do we feel like? What do we look like from somebody wanting to come and work for us? And I think that's where your starting point is.
Christian, the Viking estate letting agent, what have you got to add to this?
I think for us, it's something that we've known for quite a while, but structure has been missing for us. It's something we're trying to address now. So we're on the hunt at the moment for our very first office manager. And what we're hoping that's going to achieve is that's going to bring a bit more structure and regularity to the working week for our team and take that pressure off Anne and I. And I think we feel we're failing at delivering the team that sort of structure. And hopefully that will free us up to deliver some of the things we've talked about now. So like one-to-ones, we do that on an annual basis. But, you know, I've put down here, I don't think I would do it monthly, but I've written down here that I would want to implement that quarterly. And thinking about some of the things Heather's talked about the tough questions, but also bring some of the things we've always done before about really understanding what motivates our staff outside. And the only thing I just wanted to quickly add is we're all human beings. And I think sometimes, and this isn't unique to agency, right? This for every boss. We had that massive court case a year and a half ago, which shone a very bad light on our industry, where that female employee wasn't allowed to have accommodate a slight change in her working hours to accommodate family circumstances. And the employer, in my mind, rightly got very heavily punished for that. I was staggered the other day, and I'm not sure if it was Charlotte or someone else, but someone had posted not about themselves, but about someone they knew working in an agency whose kid was sick. And the boss's attitude wasn't go home, look after your kid. The boss's attitude was not my problem. You're paid to work the hours, figure something else out. And I think, you know, how you get that member of staff is going to have no loyalty to your brand if that's your attitude. You know, let's all just be a little bit more considerate. If you're human to someone, they'll be human back to your business.
Matt Baldock, and if you could make it short and sweet, please.
I really liked, so I think it was all, more or less the first thing Vicky said, which was about the Humanity Plus company. I thought, yeah, that's something. And then Heather, about asking questions you might not like the answer to. So we feel like we're fairly open here, but I do like that. Just, yeah, you've got to be accountable as the employer. So ask questions even if you don't like the answer.
Thank you, Matt. Nick Ball from Mio.
Yeah, I would focus on, if it were me, building a relationship, a safe environment, a psychologically safe environment for those members of staff to actually be confident and comfortable to have those delicate conversations with you in the future. And once you've fostered that, you're all on the same page.
Thank you. Sam Jones from Moneypenny.
For me, it's communication, and I'll reiterate what a few people have already said, those direct, difficult questions. What's not fun about working here? I think that's really resonated with me, and having those conversations that will open up where, well, a little bit more honesty, I think is key.
Excellent. Heather Staff from Spectre Street.
Two things. One, I've learned from Matt that my surname is a dirty word and that I probably need to change it. Two, I think we probably don't do enough around, well, it's Vicky and Charlotte's point around that bigger purpose, career, all of that. I think we could probably do a lot more on that.
Thank you. Zoe Bywater from Belvoir, Bedford.
I'll be quick. It's okay to get it wrong. This is a big onion and we've only just scratched the surface here. And there'll be people, and there's people on here that I think are absolutely awesome, have also shown their vulnerability and that they don't always get it right as well. And I actually applaud that. And I think for anybody watching, they need to appreciate that and to reach out to any of us because we're here to help.
Ian White.
Look, actually, I'm going to give a bit of advice, and I hope Samantha Jones doesn't mind me doing this. If you want to understand what good business culture is, ask if they'll show you around their business. Just ask if they'll show you around their business, because it's just in every part of the fabric of it. And I've never failed but to be impressed by the people I meet, the environment, the way they greet you, everything about it. Everything what everybody has said. I love some of the stuff that Matt said about not having, he'd rather not have a business than an unhappy business. I think it's a great line. I think it's a great attitude. But if you really want to see, and you could on a smaller scale, you can go down to location. They just exude the right. They do everything. They help with retention. They sort attraction. They're just how it should be.
It's like as John Paul says, I'd rather have an arsehole than a hole. No, it's the way around, isn't it? I'd rather have a hole in my business than an arsehole in my business. Got that one wrong. Oh well, never mind. I'll never live that one down. Okay, final words, Ben Sellers.
Well, I'm with everyone's tile. Humanity Plus, you've got to love. We've always been about happiness. It always wins if you're happy, Matt, and fun. But I have to, raise the Nando's moment, because those small things, the smallest things that cost you nothing go a million miles and they get remembered beyond any money. So little touches are winners.
Absolutely. I was at Live 8. I was listening to Pink Floyd. I found them for the first time, and my boss, I told him about it a few days later, and he actually went out to a record shop and bought me back a Pink Floyd, and I still remember it today. And so much so that just before lockdown, I actually went and saw him because I thought the world of him, because he went and bought me. It's the little things.
Amazing.
Boys and girls, thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. I will be doing a webinar, all being well, at the end of February, and we're not sure what the topic is. We always find out what people are talking about, and we try and give you some value for that. I'll leave. So my final thing is thank you very much for everyone for watching. Thank you for attending, and thank you everyone who's on this call here, who's given some great some input. So give everyone a round of applause, and we'll see you. Bye bye. Thanks very much. Wave goodbye to everyone. Come on, let's go. Come on, Ed.